Back for take two, or I suppose you could call it part two of a previous video that I've just posted. So I'll post this one straight after the last one where I was cutting 316 stainless on pretty much exactly the same length, 350mm long thread, M22. So the only thing that's changed this time is the same customer wants the same part, but in mold steel. Instead of 1-inch stainless, they want 25mm mold steel. 1020 this time, not the greatest material to work with, but it's usable. M22 thread again, same taper, everything's exactly the same, as I say, except for the size of the bar and the material we're using. So in this video, I'm trying to get a bit more to the point. The last one, I didn't really explain what was going on or anything, so you have another go at doing things. You can usually get it better the second time round. Just try and cover a bit more information, I suppose, in this, and just do a couple of runs and just show you the actual material running. I'll just bring over that piece of stainless I cut. Well, actually the job's gone back to the customer, but this is one that I tried before attempting on the customer's job, so not too sure how well that's coming up in the camera. You might be able to see, not sure, because I'm only looking at a tiny little screen. Same length, 316. And there's just a little bit of chatter towards probably starting, if I get the bar back far enough, but probably getting from, well, as you're leaving the tailstock, well, opposite end of the bar, but same thing, leaving the tailstock and getting to midpoint, you're going to start picking up chatter, which I'll talk about shortly in the video, how you can get around, well, controlling the chatter other than mucking around with feeds and speeds. And there's a little bit of chatter in the center there. Obviously, a V-shaped tool feeding straight in, even at 29 degrees, is going to leave a little bit of chatter, especially on a little bit of a hard material to cut like 316. So I tried that out on, as I say, on a sample piece first before trying it out on the customer's piece. I don't cut threads every day, even though I'm pretty confident at cutting threads. I've cut heaps of threads over the years, but I don't do them every day, and you sort of got to brush up your skills a little bit, and especially cutting threads that long on 316 stainless is a bit of a push for most people, and you do get out a bit of a practice when you're not doing things all the time. So I did practice on that and just get it right dialed in before I attempted it on the customer part. So everything's pretty much exactly the same, as the setup's all exactly the same, even though I do cut threads most of the time at 90 degrees, so 90 degrees to the part. I don't normally have the tool post just swinging you around so you actually know what I'm talking about. I'm not great at shooting videos, if you excuse me. So compound at 29 degrees again, so I'm going to simulate everything exactly as it was, except we're using mild steel instead of stainless steel. As I mentioned earlier, Euro style post, tool post, 40 position post, so you've got 8 degrees, well, 360 degrees divided by 40 positions, so it should work out to about 8 degrees, but my maths anyway, I might be wrong. So the tool doesn't sit perfect. I've got it sort of mounted at 90 degrees, but it doesn't sit straight, so it's sort of tapered in the tool holder. You might be able to see that there. Just something I'd sort of add in case it came up as a question, why is it tapered? I think that's probably most of what I can say. As far as doing your setup, let's talk more on the basics, more so how to cut the threads, rather than the experienced guys don't need to teach them how to cut threads. So this is more of an intro of how to cut threads, especially cut threads on long pieces of material. So we'll keep it a bit more base with this one. Touching off your tool, if you're lucky enough to have a DRO, touch off your tool, zero out your DRO. And then on your slide, you have a little dial wheel, most of them do. And then what I do is, with a Sharpie, I normally mark 0, just so you know where it is, because some of the readout or the markings on there are a little bit hard to see. So you'll know where 0 is, you come back to that, it's just easy rather than trying to find it. And then obviously you'll crank back out from your depth of cut, and then come back to the start, and then reset to your depth of cut again, which I'll show you a little bit of that anyway, if not dragging on for too long, but just trying to cover a bit of basic information for the start. Sorry for those who don't like talking in videos, but there is a bit of education to learn about cutting threads, especially threads this long. I think I've covered most of what I could sort of talk about there, just swinging back around, getting you back around. Relief cut at the end, or somewhere to park your tool, especially if you've got materials difference in size. In this case, it's not a lot of difference. We're going from 22 to 25, M22 by 2.5 thread. and just make your relief in here so you've got somewhere to park your tool. The width of the relief's up to you, or if you want to use one or not, it's totally up to you. But especially if you've got material that's a lot larger than the thread you're cutting, say argument, say you've got 50mm bar and you're cutting M22 or a 22mm bar, you mightn't have enough time to get out of your cut. So some guys like to just disengage as they get to the end of the cut. I usually just put a relief in there and just cut to the relief, just a lot more easy. And I usually find it's a lot better. So the width of that is up to you, but generally as your depth of cut or the pitch increases, you want to increase that. So you can get on finer threads, you might better get away with just pulling out at the end of the thread, but 2.5 is a bit of a 2.5 pitch is a bit of a depth of cut. In this case, we're feeding in at 29 degrees. We're feeding in about 1.8 mil direct. So in other words, that's per in radius, not in diameter. So so it works out to 3.6 over that diameter. So you'll have to check the maths on that one. Being from a maintenance background, I sort of do things thinking on my feet. So there is maths to work out angles for your compound to cut threads, but as I say, from the maintenance background, you just get in, get things done. You don't think about too much. So I just cut the thread, try it with a sample, usually with the nut that's got to go on there, and just get it done that way. So for those guys who need to know the maths, there is guides and machinist books and things like that you can look up. But I usually just find I just cut the thread, and as I'm getting close, I just try it and see the size of the nut. That's what's got to go on there. That's what I cut the thread to. So I don't worry about the maths. If it's on a production part, then that's different. But I usually measure with a thread gauge anyway, as far as a digital, a thread micrometer, I should say. Eventually get the word right. I think you lose what I'm talking about in videos. Being 1020, it didn't cut that great. It got a little bit of chatter, pretty much most of it. A little bit of hand finishing, especially over that length. As far as cutting threads and you're picking up chatter, I did mention in the last video traveling steady. I'll just grab that up and bring up what I mean by traveling steady. Just trying to get the light right and trying to get this thing up in front of the camera is not easy. So fixed steadies, most of you all know, where they just sit on the slideway and it's for supporting large shafts. So traveling steady, most of you probably have these on your lathe. If you've got newer lathes, you will, but older lathes maybe not. Just the brass inserts, whereas the traveling ones are normally got rollers in them. But this is just to control your chatter or for slender size parts where you don't want the part pushing away from the tool. How would you use that when you're cutting threads? Just putting that down for a second, I'll explain what I'm talking about. So getting back to the thread now. So as I say, more basic guide than an actual, for those pros who might be watching. Feeding in, you probably won't get a lot of chatter coming in, and as you get midpoint, you'll start to pick up more chatter, and then as you get more to your dampening points, tailstock and lathe chuck, it'll start the chatter will start to settle down, as you'll find when you're turning any material, regardless whether it's threads or whatever it is. So how you get around that is live with the chatter in the cut, and then as you're getting towards the last of your cuts, when you're running your steady, run your steady if you want, and then take the steady off for your last cuts. You're getting down towards the end, pull out at the end, okay, where you can see the harmonics start to settle down, okay. You'll see that early on in your cuts anyway, before you put that traveling steady on there. You'll probably try to run without traveling steady. Then as you get towards the end, it'll start to settle down. So that's the point where you want to stop, okay, so you have a bit more material to cut. On your last couple of threads this is, and then come back without the traveling steady and chase the thread right through with a very light cut and just pick up that last bit of threading here where you can't run with your traveling steady, otherwise you're going to run it in either into the chuck or it's just physically going to get in the way. So I didn't explain much of that in the last video. That's mostly why I've decided to come back and do this video again. So hopefully the information in here was worth coming back for. It's pretty much most of what I could say, but we're lucky to be able to get the part back again so I could reshoot the video again to make up for the lack of in the last video. Try to get some value for you guys to watch. As far as threading goes, pretty much standard. Come in and I've taken 0.2 aside, so I've fed the compound in at 0.4, so we're taking 0.2 aside. Thread gauge, 2.5 thread gauge. If you do want to check, just get your ruler out. For those guys who mightn't be able to read the actual, there is some numbers on there. Hopefully there's some numbers on there. It might show up in the camera, or may not. It'll probably focus on something else, of course. Probably over-explaining things a little bit, but just making sure I'm explaining things so not leaving too many questions to be answered in the comments. So 2.5 is written on there, whether it's showing on the camera or not. But if you do want to check your thread gauge, just grab your ruler. So metric for me, and imperial for those guys who haven't come into the metric world yet. And just check on your gauge. So it's the same thing. So you're chasing 2.5. So you're measuring from wherever that is, 100, 50, 60 mil, whatever that might be, and just measuring your gauge anymore. You don't have to see the numbers on the gauge to be able to know is it the right size. So just measure with a ruler, and just to confirm that you've got the right gauge before you start cutting threads, and then using that gauge to say, yep, it's right. Then you go to put the gun on, it doesn't go on. 60-degree angle, V angle. I don't think sort of much else I could sort of say. Just trying to cover a bit of information before we start getting moving. I'll set you up and I'll do a couple of runs, and I'll bring you back for the final thread just to show you the actual finished part. Hopefully it's going to run a little bit better than the stainless. The stainless is better to, I suppose, finish wise, but as far as controlling chatter, it is a little bit of a pain in the ass. So I'll just get you set up where I can work and you guys can watch, and I'll bring you back. Probably the hardest thing about shooting videos, other than making videos themselves, is finding somewhere to put you guys where you can see where you're not in my way from working. So the last thing I want to do is run the tool into the chuck when I'm trying to disengage the half nut, so I can get you guys in a good enough spot to see, although it'll be good for the video, but not good for me. So hopefully you guys can see okay there. As I say, we'll just do a run through, and then I'll bring you back for the last cut. I think I've covered most of what I could cover so far. If there's something that I've left out or something that wasn't clear, just let me know in the comments. I've had a couple of goes of shooting this video, so I feel like I'm repeating a lot of it, what I'm talking about possibly, because sometimes I forget what I've already said, what I've said in probably two or three other takes of trying to make this video. So hopefully this one works out and you guys are watching it. So I'll just kick it into gear, we'll run through, and as I say, I'll bring you back for the final, and then I'll just have a bit of a look at the thread and just spin the nut on there and just show you and just talk a little bit about, just to wind the video up. Hopefully the noise cancelling will kick in and take out some of the noise. Manual lathes aren't exactly that quiet. I think I've probably covered most of what I could think of in the video, but some things, as I say, I forgot what I've said from the previous videos, what I've already said in this video. I'm not big on editing, so it's hard to cut things out if I've stuffed something up. So plenty of oil on everything, oil on the part, oil on the lead screw and on the slideway. So I'll keep everything lubed up to the max. So we'll kick it into gear and we'll get everything moving. I did cheat a little bit and do a couple of cuts when the camera wasn't running, because usually if you put a camera at something goes wrong. So we'll just keep going with it anyway. It sort of stopped starting for me, but it's all continuous for you. So excuse the noise, we can't do much about that. That's about 0.2 aside now, so we're in a couple of cuts now. Hoping for the best on no chatter. Pretty good so far anyway, a little bit further in. Just kill it there for a second. I'll bring you back for the final cut. One thing I did forget to mention in measuring the size of the thread, because you obviously can't get the nut on there until the end, as a sort of check along the way, I suppose, rather than messing around with. I know a lot of guys like to measure threads with wires. I've never liked doing that unless I have to, but I prefer to use micrometers for measuring threads. But for those who don't have a micrometer that can measure threads anyway with a V anvil on it, the next best thing you can do is just measure across best as you can with a pair of verniers or a set of verniers, and just measure across just to see how you're tracking. And as you're getting close, you'll see it. Even though you measure on an angle, you just use your common sense and just say, I'm getting close. And then you know where you are, just so you don't overshoot it and make the thread too loose. It's just something I just thought I'd throw into the video just for those who are interested anyway. It's just probably the worst thing about cutting anything is making sure when you've got material still on there to work with, you're fine. But when you overshoot it and then you've got to do it again, it's a pain in the ass, especially if you've got something like this where you don't want to probably do it again. One good thing about mild steel compared to stainless, as I mentioned in the last video, if you're cutting stainless, you just got to get into it. Otherwise, if you start rubbing or doing too many spring cuts, it'll start to the work harden, has the nature of stainless or any type of hardenable grade steels. Mild steel is the same as 4140s and so forth, but mild steel you could, because you can sneak up on the thread a little bit more. So I was probably a bit more aggressive with this feeds. Depth of cut went with the stainless, so it seems we're going to go a little bit more over on the mild steel as we did to the stainless steel as far as getting down to depth. So we're at 1.8 now, and we're probably looking to go to 1.9, so 1.9 per size to get it to get us to size. So just going to do another spring cut. I'll get it fired up, and then we'll just do another run through for those who are interested to watch. Just bringing you in handheld now. I keep talking like it's all stop-start for me, but as I say, it's all continuous for you. So as you can see, I've got the nut down this far, and it wasn't an effort to get it down there. Typical lower grade steel or mild steel, 1020 I think it was. The surface finish was a lot better on the stainless, although I did get a lot more, well, I'll say a little bit more, so I say a lot more. You probably might be able to see where I showed you the stainless bar earlier. There was a tiny bit of chatter right down the base of the thread, which is going to happen, of course, when you're pointing a sharp tool at something like 316, especially into a V thread, where it's even though it's feeding at 29 degrees, it is still going to pick up a little bit of chatter, as I say, just getting it back right in the middle of the bar. So that end's done. So all I've got to do now is cut it off the length now and cut another thread on the other end, about 30 mil long. So that'll be a lot easier than cutting this 350 mil long thread. So that goes on there nice and easy, pretty nice fit. So it worked out to about as far as finish size go, as far as depth of cut went on the compound, worked out to 1.85. So a little bit more than the stainless, but with that aggressive cut, it's probably it probably cuts better with stainless. This doesn't really 1020, 1030 or that sort of around that sort of grade never really cuts that great. 1045 a little bit better, 4140 would cut a lot better, as I say. Better quality metals usually cut a lot better, even though they're a bit more difficult to cut, but they generally cut a lot better. One other thing I was going to say that I've forgotten about because I was yabbering on too much, but the good thing about it is the job's done now, and I was able to come back and show you guys in another video. What I was going to mention was as far as taper goes, so from one end of the bar to the other, I finished up with, we're talking in metric this is, so less than a thou, so we've got let me think now, I'm going to say the right number, 0.015, so over the length of the actual from one end to the other. So the lathe cut's pretty good, especially between the tailstock and the chuck. So probably not super critical on lathes to get the tape, the zero taper, but obviously you want your lathe cutting fairly straight. So obviously you don't want it going on at one end as you're winding it, starting to bind up at the other end, vice versa. It goes on at one end, but it won't at the other. So obviously you need a nice straight bar, but you can usually do a bit of hand finishing to get threads into size. It's not like it needs to go into a bearing or something like that. So you can play with it a little bit anyway when you're hand finishing. And I did plan on bringing you back for the final run, but finished up being a bit of mucking around as far as just controlling a little bit of chatter there. So I was probably using a bit of an unorthodox sort of way of doing it. Obviously, I didn't set up the travelling steady. That's more so if you've got time, which I don't. Shooting the video and trying to get jobs done is not something I have time to do. So as far as doing proper setup, travelling steady if you're getting chatter. Otherwise, just get into it and just have some practice on some softer materials if you're not confident, aluminium and things like that when you stay away from the chuck. And if you're not, as I say, not so confident, just practice until you dial it in, and then try sort of slightly harder materials, but not as nice to cut. 1020s, 1030s, and maybe some mild steel if you want. But otherwise, apologies to make the video too long, but try to cover as much information and just sort of like make up for my last effort that even I can feel the last video that I just posted wasn't really great. So it was my chance to come back and redo this video again. And my lathe's a little bit cleaner in this video too. So thanks for following along. And if you've watched to the end, you've done well. Hopefully it was worth hanging around for, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Okay, bye-bye for now.